There is a hidden layout secret inside the original Ibanez Tube Screamer manual that completely changes how this legendary pedal behaves.
Most guitarists buy a TS808 or TS9, crank the drive knob to get distortion, and end up with a thin, boxy sound that ruins their tone. But if you look at how the absolute masters of the blues rock lineage actually set up this circuit, the knobs are positioned in a way that seems completely wrong until you hear the magic it does to a real tube amp.
Look, I've spent well over 30 years dragging gear into bars, recording in studios, and constantly chasing tone. And over the decades, I can't tell you how many guys I've watched buy this little green box, take it home, and just assume it's meant to be a heavy, standalone distortion pedal. But if you dig into the original printed service manual, you realize right away that this physical circuit was never built to be your main distortion sound. If you buy a Tube Screamer expecting it to dump thick, fuzzy saturation onto a completely clean amplifier, you're going to be severely disappointed. It simply isn't wired to do that. It was designed to do something much more specific and honestly, when you use it right, something way more powerful.
To get what this pedal actually does, we have to look at its hidden purpose. At its core, the Tube Screamer is fundamentally an active mid-range boost. Now, I'm no bench engineer, so let's translate what that actually means for your ears when you're standing on a stage sweating under the lights. It means this circuit is built to strip away those low, muddy bass frequencies that just get tangled up with the drummer's kick drum. And at the exact same time, it grabs the thickest, warmest, meatiest notes your guitar can make, your mid-range, and violently shoves them to the absolute front of the live band mix. It forces every single note you play to pierce right through the crashing cymbals and the rumbling bass guitar so the crowd actually hears you.
But that specific design is exactly why so many of us run headfirst into what I call the disaster zone. We've all done it, right? You get the pedal, and you plug it straight into a sterile, cold digital computer interface. Or maybe you plug it into a solid-state clean app in your bedroom, keeping the volume at a whisper so you don't wake up the family. And the result? It sounds like an absolute disaster. It's hollow, it's weak. It literally sounds like a swarm of angry bees trapped in a tin can. You end up with this thin, nasal toy tone with a really harsh buzz just sitting on top of it. It's frustrating, and it makes you think the pedal is broken or the legends were lying. But it's not broken at all. The pedal is just starved. It is actively searching for a loud, breathing amplifier to push, and you just aren't giving it one.
The reason it gets so thin and squeaky in that quiet bedroom setting is because of a specific physical feature inside the pedal called the 720 Hz bass cut filter. Again, we don't care about the math here, we care about the music. For your hands and your ears, this simply means the pedal has a built-in filter that instantly chops off all the loose, messy low-end rumble. It's designed so that when you dig into your heavy-bottom E string with a thick pick, the note stays tight and snappy. It prevents your amp from sounding like a muffled, flubby mess. But if you're playing quietly through a cold amp, chopping off that bass just guts your tone completely. That filter only does its job right when the rest of your rig is running hot and ready to rock.
So let's contrast the common mistake with exactly what the touring pros actually do on stage night after night. The wrong way, which is what almost every beginner does, is to crank that drive knob all the way up to 10, keep the level knob low to save your hearing, and play through a totally clean solid-state amp. Now let this sink in, because the pro way, the absolute sweet spot for this circuit, is the exact opposite. You take the drive knob and roll it all the way down to 0. Then you crank the level knob all the way up to maximum, and you plug the whole thing into a warm, loud tube amplifier. Let's break down the physical mechanics of why this pro setting works. When you roll that drive knob to 0, you are telling the pedal to stop trying to create its own fake distortion. And when you roll the level knob up to maximum, you are essentially opening the floodgates. You are forcing a massive, completely clean wave of electrical voltage straight out of the output jack of the pedal. You aren't sending dirt or grit down the cable anymore. You are sending raw, clean power. And right here is where the magic happens. That massive clean wave of power leaves the pedal, travels down your cable, and just slams into your amplifier. Specifically, it hits the first glass vacuum tube of your amp so hard that the amp itself starts to sweat and work overtime. The amplifiers simply cannot handle that much clean signal at once, so the amp itself naturally breaks up. You get this smooth, thick, singing sustain, but it's coming from the hot tubes, not the little green box. You can actually feel the strings pushing back against your fingers as the amp reacts to your playing. The pedal is just acting like a hammer. Your amplifier is the thing making all the beautiful noise.
We can ground this exact setup right in rock history. Stevie Vaughan, the man who heavily popularized this pedal for all of us, explained this himself in a 1983 interview. He said, "You can turn it on slightly to get a guitar slim tone, which is how I use it." Notice he wasn't using it to bury his Stratocaster in artificial fuzz. He used it precisely this way, as a clean boost to push his amplifiers over the edge. That's how he got that huge, blooming sound that you literally feel right in your chest.
If you look closely at Stevie's rig, you find the real Texas Tone Blue Pint. He would often run 2 tube screamers, set exactly like we just laid out. Drive all the way down, level all the way up. And he would feed them into big, heavy, cranked Fender amps, like a super reverb. Those amps were already turned up loud. The glass tubes were already warm and cooking. So when he stepped on that tube screamer, it just hit those cooking tubes with a massive punch. That created a gigantic, woody, aggressive tone. But it still kept every single nuance of his hands. You could hear the wood of the guitar in every single note.
Eric Clapton used this exact same gain push structure for one very specific reason: slicing through a live mix. When you're up on a massive concert stage, the sonic environment is just chaos. You've got the bass player and a huge kick drum eating up all the low frequencies and vibrating the floorboards. If your guitar tone has too much bass in that situation, you just turn into mud and completely disappear into the background. By using the tube screamer to cut his bass frequencies and slam his mid-range into a hot amp, Clapton made sure his solos sliced clearly through that massive mix. Every single note jumped right out of the stadium speakers so the guy in the very back row could hear the melody.
All right, so let's put this into practice on your own board. Here is exactly how you mount this premium piece of history onto your rig tonight. Step 1. Place it early in your signal chain, right after your guitar and your tuner. Step 2. Reach down, ignore your old habits, dial that drive knob all the way to 0, and crank the level knob to maximum. Step 3. Push that signal into a warm tube amp. Your amp needs to be turned up enough that it's starting to get a little bit of natural grit on its own. It needs to be breathing, not choked off.
Think of this as your complete signal chain manual for the workbench. Always place the tube screamer right before your other overdrive pedals so it can push them the exact same way it pushes an amp. Seriously, stop treating this thing like a distortion box and start treating it as an amplifier manipulator. Keep your amp's master volume hot enough so those tubes are ready to break up naturally. And finally, once the pedal is on, just leave it on. Use the volume knob right on your guitar as your steering wheel. Roll your guitar volume back a little bit for a fat, clean rhythm sound, and then dime it all the way up when you want the amp to bite and scream for a solo. You steer the whole ship right from your hands.
Is the tube screamer really a boxy, overhyped pedal, or have you just been using the drive knob the wrong way instead of hitting the pro sweet spot?